welcome to Urban Ink Spot. My name is Janine, and today we're going to do a recap of my August and September 2025 currently inked. Now, I had 10 pens inked, and that's a lot of pens for me. And so what I'm going to do is put on the screen for each pen how they ranked according to the 5 categories, and then talk about one of those categories in particular as I just kind of recap my experience with that pen and ink pairing. So as a quick reminder, the 5 categories that I measure all of my pen and ink pairings by are aesthetics, writing experience, versatility and reliability, shareability, and personal enjoyment. And then I do a composite score, which is basically an average across all 5 of those, so I can use a numerical way of identifying really what it was that I did or didn't like about each of these pen pairings, kind of ranking them against each other using that score. So as I said, I had 10 pens inked. You're going to see 11 pens here. And there were also a couple of other pens that kind of made an appearance throughout the month's videos, and I'll talk about those, or through the couple of months, but I'll talk about those here in just a moment. So the first pen that we want to talk about is my Pilot Custom 823, and this started the month, or started August and September as a medium nib, and I had this inked with Robert Oster Chocolate, and I gave this 10s across the board, but specifically for the writing experience, I think I found my go-to ink for this pen because there's a real richness into this ink that I feel like is kind of right behind the scenes, and it's really lubricated. So I really enjoy how much it gushes just the right amount for both note-taking and journaling. Now, it's not super easy to use if I'm doing a lot of flip through the pages kind of planning, which I do usually on Mondays. And then in the fourth quarter is when I do a lot of that. But other than that, I had like so many pens inked this month that I really didn't care. Now, I said this pen started August and September as a medium nib, and it was in fact a medium nib until this last weekend where I had this ground into a cursive italic by Gina Salarino. So you'll notice that the reservoir is empty. But because I've been loving chocolate so much, I ended up decanting it from this pen and putting it into my Pilot Elite 95S, which will probably surprise no one if you've been following my channel as you look back, or as I look back at some of the earlier months where I've had this pen inked. It seems to be the one that I'm gravitating to a lot. So I just inked this in last weekend with the leftover from this reservoir. So you will be seeing this coming up in my October 2025 currently inked. And I have been reaching for this a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm mostly through with that small fill. The second pen that I had inked is my Pilot Custom 74 in a medium nib that was ground into a journaler by Gina Salarino of Custom Nib Studio. And I had this inked with Sailor Zare Gokuro. This is probably one of my favorite pairings of all of my pen and inks. I love this pen. This pen is very sentimental to me. And this ink in this pen is really just chef's kiss. So for this one, I want to talk about the aesthetics. Now, I gave it also 10 across the board, but aesthetics in particular, this might just be one of my favorite pairings, as I was saying. It was really hard for me not to ink this one up again. I probably finished this fill first. And it was really hard for me not to ink it up again so that I could reach for my other pens this month, of which, as you can see, I have many. So that was a bit of a challenge, not to just go keep inking it up, but I wanted to give my other pens a fair shake. And they were really great pairings for the most part. So Sailor Zare Gokuro, previously inked in my Custom 74. And you can see over here, let me just tell these quickly. I did say on my Pilot Custom 823, I gave it an A and an A plus with a 10 ranking. My Pilot Custom 74, A plus with a 10 ranking. Both of these really, really excellent 10s across the board for both. The third pen that I had inked is my Black Robin Skateboard pen. And I put in this pen Kyo No Oto Hisoku. And this was previously a medium nib that I had ground by Gina Salarino into a journaler nib. And I wanted to, I'm looking for a really great brown to go in this pen because I kind of want to showcase the wood pieces here that show off, the fact that this is made out of recycled skateboards, and that's kind of what I'm looking to feature here. So on this pen, I want to talk about the writing experience. I mean, like I said, this pen is just, it's really gorgeous. Now, Black Robin Pen is a maker out of the UK. And after her annual commissioned pens that she makes, she releases any extra pens. She tries to make extra just in case something goes wrong in the making of the commissioned pens. And so when she's done making those and she's comfortable with the high quality that she is known for, she releases any of those extra pens for sale. And I got online the second it was released. I think she sold out of all of the pens in just a couple of minutes. So I'm not trying to create any FOMO here. I'm glad I acted on mine. And the writing experience for this pen and ink pairing is just lovely. I really am enjoying Kyo No Oto ink brand in general. And I'm not certain that this is the ink for this pen, but it might be trending that direction. I do still have a pretty good amount of the sample left, as you can see here. I'm probably about halfway. I put some tape over this. I can't exactly see the measurement, but it looks like I have about half a vial left of this. So I'm going to keep working through this vial to see if I can either get really tired of this ink or if it does want to stay in my lineup, probably with this pen. The next pen I want to talk about was my MUJI aluminum pen in extra fine that I had inked with Kyo No Oto Hisoku. Now, what I want to talk about with this pen, this ended up getting an F rating. I gave it a 3 average across all of the categories. I want to talk specifically about the writing experience. This is not my pairing. The nib was really too fine to work with the light ink, so it was hard for me to read. Anyway, I'm pretty excited because I went through and after documenting how this pen was writing over the first few couple of days, I made a decision to move the converter from this pen into another pen that also accepts international converters. Thankfully, that saved what was happening for this ink this month. So you can see, I inked it. I guess I inked this on maybe September 30th, October 1st. I don't know the exact day. I wrote with it on September 2nd, looking a little bit better, still not great. Wrote with it again September 3rd, a little bit better, still not great. September 5th. Even better, it looked like maybe the ink was drying out a little bit in the pen and it was starting to be able to make it more readable, but I bailed. On September the 7th, I bailed and decided this was not going to be my pairing. So I ended up moving it into the Botanical Garden. I've said here, I uninked it on September 7, moved converter to new pen, and am loving the new pairing. So let's take a look. And I'll do a flip through of all of these writing samples at the end of this video. But you can see much, much easier to read this pairing, you're getting a pretty good sense of the shading, and I think the broader nib here really saved the day on this one. So F3 rating overall. The next pen I want to talk about is my MUJI compact pen, also in extra fine. I had this one inked with Modena red from Montblanc, and I gave this a B- and a 7.6 rating overall. We'll talk about personal enjoyment on this pen. I gave it a 7 for personal enjoyment. And, you know, when I posted this video on my channel, a lot of people did like to click in. I guess it wasn't really, I don't know if people had seen this at the register or if they were even interested in picking it up. But MUJI pens in general do seem to get a lot of traffic on my channel. A lot of people seem to love this pen, or maybe they just love MUJI in general. But I'll just say I'm not really reaching for it very often. I do like the pairing. I chose Modena red. My husband gave me this ink. This was a gift ink from him. I like to pair this with lighter pens, especially white. I like pairing it with this white pen because it kind of reminds me of a red velvet cake for some reason. So I am liking that visually interesting pairing, but you know, not the one that I'm reaching for all that much unless I'm intentionally grabbing for it for a specific reason. The next pen I had inked was my Pilot Prera. I thought it was a fine, but it's actually a medium, and I had this one inked with Sailor Kiwaguro, which is one of the most recent inks in my collection. I gave this a B- and a 7.4 rating. And this was a really practical pairing. It was a really practical ink pairing. And so the one I want to talk about here is versatility and reliability, which I gave it a 10 in this category because, yeah, it is really reliable. I was slotting it into my planners and taking it with me on the go. You can see I completed the fill on this ink. And I've almost always had a black ink in a like a fine writer with paired with one of my journals pretty much all the time because I just like that writing experience. So I do expect that I will probably re-ink this one, but because it is so versatile, it is so reliable, it just does what I need it to do. It dries quickly. It's a really well-behaved ink, a really easy to use pen. I love the sound of this pen and the way it feels as it closes. It's really just so satisfying. So yeah, I do expect I'm gonna keep this inked, but it's gonna probably stop showing up in my currently inked, and it's gonna move into the lineup of always inked, which is essentially the pens that perform really highly in versatility and reliability. But I'll say I didn't grab for it very much because in a month where you have 10 pens, reliability and high versatility wasn't always the most intriguing option. So, but excellent pen. The next pen I had inked was my Schon Design Pocket 6 in faceted brass. And this is in a medium nib, and I had this inked with Birmingham Pen Company Interstellar Bronze, particularly because I was looking for an ink pairing that would kind of showcase the process of a pen patinaing over time. And it's one thing that I love about this pen. I love about Schon Designs. Ian Schon's pens in general are they're built and machined to last. But in terms of versatility and reliability, that's the one I want to talk about. And I gave it a 6 because the screw to post option is novel and it works really well. It's one of the things that he does incredibly well is how perfectly machined this is. But again, in a lineup where I had so many pens inked, unless I was intending to write with this, if I instead had to write very quickly and make a quick note, it was almost too short to write without posting it. And so I didn't reach for it as much in those instances. So it probably just suffered because I had so many other pens inked that I could just grab for very quickly. But I gave it a B+ rating and an 8.4 overall. I love the pairing, but I don't love the screw to post all the time because it can be, like I said, a little bit more effort. And in the moments where you are not looking for effort, when you don't want it to be effortful, that can sometimes be a problem. The next pen I had inked was my TWSBI Eco, and it is my TWSBI Eco Clear, and I had this inked with Sailor Kiwaguro. It's in a medium nib. I gave this one a B-, a 7.2. I want to talk about personal enjoyment for this one because inking a pen with a pigmented ink is more of a long-term play for me, and I don't really like tying up an everyday kind of pen, like an everyday use kind of pen that I want to reach for with such a practical ink. I know that sounds ridiculous. I should want to do that, but that actually kind of competed with my Pilot Prera. So I had two pens inked with the same ink serving the same purpose. And so for personal enjoyment, I ended up giving it a 5 because I felt like having both of these together didn't quite do what I wanted it to do. I didn't want to be overly practical in this month because it made it kind of hard for me to reach for this pen. Although you can see, I guess the facts speak for themselves. The pen, both of them are empty, so apparently I liked them enough to use them, but I didn't like them enough for either of them to particularly stand out. And then I had a TWSBI Vac Mini that was inked with Jacques Herbin, and this is in a cursive italic on one side and the other side is a broad, and I had this ground by Kirk Spear of Pen Realm, and I gave this a B+ overall and a 7.8 rating. And the one I want to talk about here is the writing experience for this one, which I gave a 7. Now, I ink this pen with this ink almost exclusively. I mean, I love this pairing, but I reach for this pen a lot when I know I'm going to be traveling because this one has a sealable ink reservoir so that you can fill it up and then take it on the go on an airplane without worrying too much about it burping into the cap, because this does shut off the reservoir, which I really like. Now that I'm basically done traveling for the year, I do have one more trip in December, but I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to keep this pairing inked up. I don't have that much ink left in the reservoir. I will finish this reservoir because I do love this writing experience, but then I think I'm probably gonna give it a super deep clean and then put it away for a little bit, probably through the remainder of the year, which is almost over. Can you believe we're already in October? Wild. Okay. Then I had my TWSBI Vac 700R inked with Lennon Toolbar Mesona T, and this is a sample that I picked up from Yoseka Stationery with the idea that I'm just going to load it up and see if I can get this ink out of my system, but if I can't, I plan to buy the bottle probably towards the end of the year, or maybe going into next year. I don't really know. I do kind of have a lot of inks in my collection at this point, a little bit more inks than I plan to have. I gave this an A and a 9.2 rating, and what I want to talk about with this one is the writing experience. Now, I do have so much ink left in the reservoir, and like I said, I'm thinking about adding it to my collection. Now, even in a TWSBI that seals really well, it can dry out in the nib because this is not a lubricated ink. And so, but once it gets going, I really love it, and I just find this color to be so pretty. It's so enjoyable to use, and so I won't be surprised if I do buy this one, just because of, you know, it's enjoyable. I love the way it shades. It puts off this brownish purplish ink color it's really just beautiful. And then, like I said, I added in this final pairing. I would say I gave this one a 9 for personal enjoyment. Out of all of the rankings that I've done here, because I've gone ahead and ranked these because this one was such a dud. I gave this an overall A with a 9.2 rating and a 9 for personal enjoyment, and I would just say bingo. I'm thankful that these two pens had interchangeable parts, so that I could make use of what is really one of my favorite inks. Kyo No Oto Hisoku. The word Hisoku, as I was reading online, means secret color. And I love that sentiment. You can see I'm basically done with this fill. I've really been enjoying this pairing. So let's do a quick flip through of these before we close out so you can see how each of these looked. Now, one other pen that I want to mention is Lamy All-Star that I did ink up in this month to do a video about why I love Lamy pens. And so I didn't technically consider this in the lineup, but it will show up in October's lineup. So here are how these pen and ink writing samples look. Down here you'll see a letter grade and a numerical grade and an ink swatch. I just, turn my pen over, do a little bit of a dab, and then add some water so that you can see how it looks as it starts to lighten up with that water. And this is Robert Oster Chocolate in my Pilot Custom 823. This is Sailor Zare Gokuro in my Pilot Custom 74. This is Kyo No Oto Ohgiiro in my Black Robin skateboard pen. This one, yeah, I mean, as I look at that, I think that does look really pretty with that brown, doesn't it? I mean, it's a really, really pretty color. So who knows? This might stay in the collection. Here's my Kyo No Oto Hisoku that started in a MUJI aluminum pen and got an F, even though it did start to write a little bit better. I wrote this not with the MUJI pen, but with my Botanical Gardens Esterbrook Estie. My MUJI compact pen with the Montblanc Modena red. Oh, I said it here. This pairing reminds me of a red velvet cake. Yeah, I do like the red coming out of that white pen. And here is the ink sample, Pilot Prera, Sailor Kiwaguro. This is my Birmingham Pen Company Interstellar Bronze, and this one is in my Schon design Pocket 6 Faceted Brass. This is my TWSBI Eco Clear with Sailor Kiwaguro in it. My TWSBI Vac Mini that has a cursive italic and a broad nib on it, and that was inked with Jacques Herbin Vert Empire. I've got a little bit of a different writing sample here so you can kind of see how the color looks as I flip the pen from one side to the other. This is Lennon Toolbar Mesona T in my TWSBI Vac 700R, and this is where I was saying that it does have a purpley brown tone to it. I really do like it. You can see some of the hard starts a little bit as you look at this ink pairing, but as you look at this ink written with this pen, but overall, once it gets going, really enjoyable. And then this is my Esterbrook Estie Botanical Gardens that is inked with Hisoku. And this is a smooth metallic grind. And I am almost done. As I was sharing, I'm almost done with this pairing. So that's it, folks. That's it for the recap of August and September. I will very shortly be doing my October lineup, and you are going to see probably some of the same pens that you'd seen before, but I think I'm going to be swapping in some brand new inks, especially 2 new inks that I just picked up at the Empire State Pen Show. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be inking up Central Park Twilight, probably into my Sailor Pro Gear Slim that I just had, ground by Gina Salarino, and then this Troublemaker ink that I'm not sure which pen it's going to go into. That will be a mystery. So thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate every minute of the time that you choose to spend with me on my channel. And I look forward to catching up with you in the next one. Until then, write slowly, love deeply, and be infinite. All right. See you on the next one. Bye.